Hello and welcome back to the channel. I'm Sam and welcome to Semantics Reads and Writes. So today we're going to be going through the books that I read in January. There were 7 of them, 1 DNF, but overall not too bad. I'm pretty happy with the number of books I read. I did have a goal of reading 8, but 7 I'll still take. Overall this month, I really liked everything that I read. I don't think anything actually got below a 3-star, which is very impressive and very exciting. So we're just gonna hop right into it and see what we can come up with. Nothing I finished was under 4 stars, not 3 stars. Okay. Of the books that I read, 2 of them or three technically were full ebooks and the rest were physical books, so I am making progress in reading the physical books that I own, and I actually ended up with 2 5-star reads this month, which I will get into, although I don't have physical copies of them right now because they never came, so I need to figure out where they are in the mail right now, honestly. I'm using my new bullet journal. I'm trying to journal about my thoughts on books, so we'll see how this goes. I haven't done this in a very long time, and the last time I did, I didn't write out summaries, like my thoughts. And I'll admit, I was really slow at doing so. I didn't really do it as I finished the books, I just kind of did, so we'll see how this goes. Alright, the first book that I finished in January, the first book I finished this year was The Stone of Farewell by Tad Williams. This is the second book in the Memory, Sorrow, and Thorns series. It's a chonker book, and these special editions do make them look longer, but it is still a long book. I believe this one was like 900 some odd pages or something like that. Actually, now I'm gonna check because I want to know. Yeah, it's this book, or sorry, not 900. This book was 850 pages, so it was still a long book. It took me a while to finish it. I'm glad I did. I did enjoy myself with this one. I ended up giving it a 4.5. Honestly, this was a very, very good second book that for me did not feel like it had second book syndrome. It also did not have that drag that the first book had in the beginning. The first half of the first book of this series, The Dragonbone Chair, was very much like world building, very like kind of monotonous things, but it built up the world very nicely to the point where we really got a lot of development in this book, but it didn't feel like it dragged at all. I was completely captivated the entire time with what was happening to Siomen, to Simon, and what was happening to all the other characters. I was finally able to kind of reconcile with just how many POVs there are in this book. There are like 9, I swear. There might be more, I don't know. They keep switching, but I do personally not mind the way that Tad Williams goes through and switches points of view, mostly because it feels like almost a natural kind of progression. So it's something that while we switch points of view, it's kind of like watching a fantasy show, a fantasy movie, where you do switch points of view. There aren't just the two. You get inside the heads of the bad guys, of the good guys, of the destroyed peoples, the ones that you don't think are relevant but end up becoming relevant later on. I am currently very nearly done with the 3rd book in this 4-book series, and I see why a lot of these things happen. This is definitely a turning point in the series. There's a lot of things that develop in here, and I really appreciated it. So 4.5 out of 5. The next book I finished is one that I actually picked up this past month, and it's one that I actually already lent to a friend, and that was The Nothing Man by Catherine Ryan Howard. I gave this a 4 to 5. I did really enjoy it. It is the first time I've read a Catherine Ryan Howard book, and honestly, it felt like a mixture of reading an episode of Criminal Minds and reading an episode of CSI. Specifically like CSI New York. If you guys ever saw that one, that was the, like, I think that was the one that ran the shortest, but I preferred that one personally. And it was very interesting because it was, at points, it was difficult to read, but not for the writing. It was difficult to read for the content because this is a book that follows a former serial killer, so a man who now works as a security guard, but he was a serial killer like 25, 30 years ago, and it follows him as he discovers that the one person he let live throughout his career has written a book about him. And it's him kind of delving into almost like a madness of trying to figure out where she is and trying to figure out what he needs to do about this. It's very difficult because you read about all these things that he did to these women and to these families, and it's horrendous. It's terrible, and you read from his point of view, so he's reflecting on it, and he's like excited and being like, oh, I can't believe I did this, like this was really all that kind of, and it was difficult to read at times, so it was very, very well done in my opinion. I do, for some of these, I have to remind myself it's not a thriller. There isn't a surprise twist at the end, so I can't expect that. And I think I was a little bit, and that one is on me. I should not have expected that. And that's one of the reasons that it knocked down, because in my head, it just didn't quite meet that expectation. I do think rereading a book like this would really enhance my enjoyment of it, because I think knowing how it ends, I'd be able to pick up a lot more details. Because there was a twist at the end, but again, I saw it coming like a ways away. So I do think, like, but still going all the way back to the beginning, I think would be an interesting way of rereading it. So that way, obviously, you go back to the beginning and you reread. Wow. But going back to the beginning and rereading it and trying to figure out, like, okay, these are the clues that were in here that I missed the first time around. I love doing that with thrillers and with mystery books, so that's definitely something I will do with this. The next book I read was one that I didn't realize I needed to read, and that was A Sense of Danger by Jennifer Estep. This is the first book in Section 47, a assassin/spy novel romance series. I adored this series. This book. I adored this book. I really did. I own the novella. I have the ebook for the novella, which is the second book in the series. And then I did pre-order the next book that's coming out in, I think, October this year, or September, somewhere around there. I honestly don't remember off the top of my head. But this book follows Charlotte and Desmond. So Charlotte Locke is an analyst for this company known as Section 47. Now, Section 47 is a spy organization that deals with people with magical powers. So everyone who works at Section 47 has a magical power of some sort. And Charlotte's is that she can look at information or look at a person and figure out what's wrong. Like, what is missing? What are they lying about specifically? So she's able to detect any absences in spreadsheets, any corners cut, any of that kind of stuff. So I think that's really kind of a unique kind of play on being able to tell if someone's lying, where you can look at a computer program, where you can look at a piece of paper and see where somebody wrote in a lie. Like, that to me was a fascinating idea for a superpower. And then we have Desmond, who is an assassin, and he's visiting from another area, and he basically recruits Charlotte, being like, I need you to help me with this for unspecified reasons, and we don't know his motivations straight off, but his points of view are so much fun. These characters are so interesting and so, like, hard-headed at times, but they're also really badass, and they will stick with me for a while. So I ended up giving this a 4.75 out of 5. I couldn't fully give it the 5 out of 5 just because as a thriller, it was predictable for me. I knew who the bad guys were before we got to the twist. I had that kind of figured out, honestly, pretty early on, which is unfortunate. But I really, really enjoyed this book, and I would highly recommend it. So this is a bit longer than I think I thought it was going to be, but again, I really enjoyed it. And this one, I actually have met the author, Jennifer Estep, a couple times, and she is very, very nice. All right, the next two books I read were actually a duology, and that is The Raiders of the Arcana duology by Jacqueline Benson. The first book was Empire of Shadows. I think this is one of my new favorite books, honestly. This was basically The Mummy meets Indiana Jones. Like, do you need more? So this first book mainly, or completely, follows Ellie and Adam. So Ellie is an archivist in the Victorian age, when she is, as a woman, she is not respected in her craft, but she is very good at what she does. And she ends up discovering a map inside of one of the archive materials she's looking through that's literally a map to a version of El Dorado. And my camera's gonna die. Hold on. I just talked to the camera and it wasn't even on. Oh my gosh. I haven't done that in a long time. So she finds a map that basically leads to this area's version of El Dorado. And she debates at bringing it back and knowing she should return it to her boss, but her boss has recently fired her because she is also an activist for women's rights, and she got arrested briefly. And so he fires her, and she knows he's been looking for a reason to fire her and all of that, but she overhears him agreeing to sell this map to a very shady business, and so she decides, no, I'm taking this, I'm gonna go find this city and it'll be great. And so she basically lies and weasels her way down to Honduras, where she ends up meeting a guy named Adam. Now, Adam Bates he maps out forests and land in different areas in Honduras, and he ends up unwittingly saving her one day, and then agrees to help her find this lost city. So it's all about their adventures through the wilderness, getting to know each other, and it's so much fun. Honestly, I get complete Mummy vibes from this, and to make it even better, the second book, which is Tomb of the Sun King, takes place in Egypt. So I really highly recommend this series. It was so much fun. The first 2 books are out. There's also a prequel novella, and I've also downloaded a couple other books by Jacqueline Benson because I really enjoy her writing style. The 3rd book in this series has been announced, and I believe it's just for the end of 2025. I don't know that we actually have a date yet. So I'm so excited, but the 3rd one's supposed to take place in India. I love it. And the nice thing is Jacqueline Benson obviously does her research on these places. She does her research on archaeology, on forestry services, on everything that's going on in these countries, especially at the time these books were written. There is a bug in here. And I think that's one of the reasons that I absolutely love this series. I ended up giving both books 5 stars, and they're my favorite books that I read in the month of January. And Empire of Shadows is definitely going up on one of my top books of this year because I haven't stopped thinking about these characters. I want to go back and reread them. And I actually she has some special editions that I did order, so. The next book that I picked up was The Starlight Heir by Amelia Howard. And unfortunately, I DNF'd this one at 40%. I really tried to get into this book, but I just couldn't. I couldn't drum up interest, unfortunately. So this book follows Suraya, who is a blacksmith in this kingdom, and she is able to instill her weapons with magic, which is a really cool concept. But she ends up one day getting a letter, a gold-dusted letter that is from the capital stating that the crown prince is searching for a bride and she has been selected to be a part of the selection process. But she doesn't understand why. She's just a blacksmith. She doesn't want to be princess. She has none of the qualifications. She really doesn't understand why. And as the book continues, we learn that her mother has a history at the capital. In fact, both her parents used to live in the capital city. And as she's there, she ends up connecting not with the crown prince, but with his bastard of a brother, who is your typical dark kind of bad boy, like, prince. And unfortunately for me, like, as soon as we got to the action, I still just I couldn't bring it myself to care very much. I was predicting what was happening, and I actually, when I DNF'd, I texted Callie because she has read this one, and she gave it a 3 stars, so this is a me thing. And I was like, is this the ending? And she was like, yeah, that's the ending. I said, okay, cool, thanks. And so, unfortunately, I predicted it, and I wasn't surprised by anything that had happened in the first 40%. I was intrigued by some of it, but not enough to continue with the book, unfortunately. So I did end up DNFing this one. That being said, it's a me thing when I DNF books. Other people are going to love these books, so don't let that dissuade you from reading this. it just wasn't for me, which is really unfortunate because I love this cover and I've read books by this author and I loved it. So I think this book just wasn't a hit for me. It felt done. It felt nothing new, unfortunately. The last book that I read was a manga, and I finally read volume 12 of Delicious in Dungeon by Ryoko Kui. This series is taking a turn I did not expect it to, and that turn happened in the last volume, volume 11. I have the next 2 volumes already, I believe. I have through 14 right now. And honestly, I'm just going through it a lot slower than I was before. It's just less fascinating to me now that it has become a lot more political. This story follows a group of basically D&D characters, if you will, who delve into a dungeon in order to search for a fallen comrade who is eaten by a dragon. But if they can find her before she's digested, they might be able to save her. So that's where we start, right? We have a grumpy kitty today. But it's a great story. It's all about them surviving in this dungeon and them making meals out of the different monsters that they eat and the connections that they make and the enemies they make along the way and what's happening and all of that. It is well done. It is intriguing. It is unique. She's like destroying this room as I'm talking right now. Are you just knocking things over? But overall, I'm going to continue with this series for a little bit longer, but I may not finish it just because I think it's getting into an area that just isn't quite so interesting to me. So yeah, we'll see about this one. I did give it a 4 out of 5. I enjoyed it, but the series has taken a turn that I'm not sure if I enjoy nearly as much. So we'll see. And that's what I read this month. So I only have 3 of the physical books, even though one of them I also own, but I lent it out to a friend, and then the other 2, the 2 books in the series that I read just haven't come in the mail yet. So I just don't have them yet. But I did really enjoy, I'm pretty proud of my reading for this month. I did quite well, I think. And yeah, so there we go. We did the thing. We did the thing, guys. We did it. So that's what I got for you guys here today. If you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, subscribe. It really does help me out in the long run. And let me know if you've read any of these and what you thought about them. If you just want to leave me a comment, which I appreciate at the end, how about you leave me a sword emoji, because I read a lot of like fantasy stuff this month. A lot of things that had swords. And even the Arcana series has he's got a machete he's very attached to, so there you go. But that's all I got for you guys here today, and until next time, stay safe, stay healthy, keep reading.